Tony from Spartan Preppers, and last week I spent 5 days over 125 kilometres on the Wicklow Way in the heat of an unexpected Irish heat wave in the middle of summer. This is going to be my video about the gear that I took with me on that week. It's mostly aimed at people who are travelling to Ireland and to Wicklow to do this hike. I'm going to run you through what I took, what worked, what didn't work, what I wish I'd taken, and what I wish I'd left behind. I am not a lightweight backpacker particularly, and I'm definitely not an ultralight backpacker, and I'll give you some different options on stuff as I go through, explain why I took what I took. We'll start off with clothing, and clothing starts tip to head, as our Navy boys like to go. And I'm going to start off with these, which are Merrell Moab GTXs. Extremely breathable, good value boot in the mid-range. I was very impressed with these over the week. I've had them for a while now. I've done about 250 kilometers total with them, and I'll have a full review on them coming on the website soon. These are a mid-length cut. I was hiking on my own for fairly extended periods, and a lot of it is steep, rocky, boggy, and I didn't really want to take the risk of running trail runners, which I'm kind of adverse to anyway. The downside of taking these, when you're someone like me who's cursed with something called clown feet, which is size 46 or size 12, is the weight. These weigh 635 grams each for a total of 1,270, or just under 1.3 kilos, which is hardly light. And this is a bad thing when every pound on your feet, they like to say, equals 5 pounds on your back. I am mostly going to stay in kilos, by the way, to keep the weight consistent. What I'm going to do on the blog post that I do as an accompaniment to this is do a very short kit list. So for those of you who don't want to sit through my monotone voice for the next hour, you can just go, take a look at the list and work from there. Moving up from shoes, we go to socks. I took 3 pairs of these Trespass anti-blister socks with me. Nothing particularly expensive about these, they're not darn tough or anything like that. They are a dual layer sock. There is an inner layer and an outer layer to help avoid friction and to aid in moisture wicking. They're usually 3-season socks excluding summer, and usually in Ireland we can get all 4 seasons in the same day, which is why I tend to use these. I really hadn't banked on the weather this week. 2 days before it was raining, the heat wave was not in the forecast, one of those things. Despite that, and despite the fact I had a blister from the hike I'd done the weekend before with very heavy weight over 45k, these did not cause a single another blister. They were absolutely fantastic for the week. For budget socks, I took 3 pairs with me and they lasted comfortably for the week. 55 grams per pair for a total of 165 grams. The other sock I took with me is these Trespass Coolback socks, which are much thinner and slightly lighter weight, so that at the end of the day I could loosen my boots off, take the thick heavy socks off and put these on. This helped me keep my hiking socks going for longer, so I was only wearing them during the day when I was walking, and therefore getting them saturated and everything else, which drags out their lifespan over the week and gives me something fresh and comfortable to wear in the evening after I've washed my feet. These weigh 50 grams, I just took the 1 pair just for the evenings. Moving up to sexy time, these are my Smart Wool boxers, which Alex likes to call my luxury boxer shorts, amongst other things that can't be repeated on camera. I bought these, which are a merino wool composite, some time ago. Horrific. I had to pay 40 something euros for them and could not believe how expensive they were. Now, after using them on several trips, including this extended trip this week, I really get why. They are incredibly comfortable. They wick moisture away very well. They keep the smell down. They're antibacterial. They were brilliant. I got very mild chafing at the end of one day, which is mostly down to my pack, which we'll discuss later. And that was at the end of 40 kilometers with about 15 kilos on my back. So, these were fantastic, and I took 2 pairs with me. 80.5 grams each for a total of 161 grams. Obviously, even in the heat, I couldn't wander along the Wicklow Way in just my boxer shorts, and what I had done was pack these reef shorts with me so that I had something, again, like the lightweight Trespass socks, clean and comfortable to wear in the evenings after I finished hiking for the day. Because it was so warm, I ended up wearing these during the day, which was a mistake. I could have just used my rip-off trousers, which I'll show you shortly. Instead, I wore these during the day. The backs of them have bobbled incredibly badly. They're a little too thick, a little too heavy, I'm really not happy with these at all. I'm going to do a review on them soon. Wish I hadn't taken them, wish I'd swapped them for some lightweight running shorts or something similar. One pair, 220 grams. For those of you who end up watching the video and going, hang on a minute, those aren't the trousers you took. That's correct, they're in the wash. This is a second pair of exactly the same trousers that I own. Trespass trousers, again, cheap enough. These, bought them a while back, expecting them to be throwaways, and they've actually turned out to be pretty good. They weigh 320 grams, and they have a zip off at the knee so you can turn them into shorts, which I did on the last day after I got sick and tired of the reef shorts. I've had 2 pairs of these now over the last 7 months, hiked nearly 750 kilometres between the 2 pairs, and despite the second pair being a bit hit and miss on quality, they've been exceptionally good for the money and couldn't recommend them enough. One interesting thing is that they come with a belt, and on day 2 when Alex went home and we realised how hot it was, I gave her some things to take home because they weighed, and one of which was my belt, which has a heavy Cobra buckle on it. And what I hadn't banked on was over the course of the week with the liquid that I was losing, I'd had these were pretty snug at the start of the week, and by the end of the week they weren't, so I should have kept the belt. For my upper, and you guys will see me raving about this if you actually sit through the interminable videos I shot of the trip, this Rab t-shirt is fantastic. I think they call this the Sonic LS. I will put all the makes, models, and exactly of everything in the main blog article. I bought this a long while ago and I've used it for a few weekend hiking trips, and it's been fantastic. It's 110 grams. They are very lightweight, very breathable, they wick very well. This particular model has a collar on the top which helped keep some of the sun off my neck and also allowed me to zip up at the front in the evenings and keep the insects away a little bit. Has a zip front that goes about halfway down so you can air out when you've got your pack off. Every time I stopped, despite the heat, I could get under shade, put my pack down and just be stood wearing this. In 10 minutes I was bone dry. I could also rinse it in streams as I was going past, put it on my pack for 10 minutes, and again, it was bone dry. I only had to take the one for the week, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Very odor resistant, very breathable, really wicked away the sweat. Cannot praise this enough. I go mad about gear. I have never been this impressed with a t-shirt. So much so, I've just ordered another one in a different colour from Rab. Second to last, anyone who hikes with me will know what this is. It is a buffalo top. I took this with me because it's my standard issue gear for hiking in Ireland. It is a layer that you wear next to your skin without an underlayer, provides you a Pertex lining that keeps you warm and it's windproof, and a DWR water resistant outer which will cope with all but the worst rainstorms when you have to really change into proper waterproofs. It has exceptional ventilation on the sides, could never go anywhere without one of these things, and they're extremely warm. They're just fantastic bits of kit. I'll be doing a full review normally. Just Google buffalo tops, they've been copied by pretty much anybody, and this is the active light version. Still fantastic top. I didn't end up using this week because of the weather. However, in Ireland the weather can change very quickly, and would have been grateful to have it with me. Don't regret taking it with me even if I didn't use it, because 9 times out of 10 or even 99 times out of 100 in Ireland I would normally be using it. This weighs 550 grams. Last up in terms of mainstream clothing was my hat, which is an Ayacucho. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation on that. Weighs just 58 grams. It's a very, very light ripstop material hat with a good rigid peak on it, which is very good at keeping the sun out of my eyes after my sunglasses broke. Not great at keeping the sun off your neck though, and I have just bought a safari hat to replace this, which Alex thinks looks incredibly funny on me, and to be honest does look better on her than me. But anyway, this was a great bit of kit. Supposed to be UV resistant, and as soon as my bald spot didn't get fried, I'm assuming that it worked for that. And it's supposed to be mosquito resistant, which is an interesting one, because when you'll see the videos of the Wicklow Way hike, you'll see that I was surrounded by clouds of insects all week. It's peak season and I was sweating cobs. However, I didn't get bitten by a mosquito once. It's pretty rare that I do. If there's someone else around, they find everybody else tastier than me, but me being on their own, I thought they might have had a light snack and they didn't. Was that anything to do with the hat? Maybe. I did also have insect repellent on, and the trousers from Trespass are supposed to be mosquito repellent as well, so maybe they were doing their job. Okay, we've covered clothing. Notice I've not done like any scarves or gloves or anything like that, because they're kind of optional extras, and I'm going to cover those as I move around how things are packed in my pack. That was the base clothing that I took for the week. Honestly, you don't need to take any more than that. That worked out at about 2.8 kilos, about 6 pounds, or just over 6 pounds. We did a mix, as I say, of B&B and camping. I took, one thing I don't have on there that only weighed a couple of 100 grams was I had an extra t-shirt like this just for wearing in the evening. I don't have it with me, so I can just weigh it. I will add it to the blog post. Maybe that would have taken us up to the full 3 kilos, right? So you would have been at like 6.4 pounds. You really don't need much more kit than that. And if you're camping, you want to keep your gear as low as possible. Even if the weather had been substantially worse than it was, raining, miserable, everything else, I still had enough with that gear to get me through the week, absolutely no problem whatsoever. Now, if you're doing B&Bs for the 5 nights, feel free to take more clothing than that with you, because most of the B&Bs offer a transit service where you can ship your bags from one B&B to the next, and you're not going to be carrying a ton of heavy camping gear, so you've got room to have some nicer clothes with you to explore the local villages and go out for a pint of the black stuff and a nice meal in the evening. With clothing out of the way, let's start moving on to the first of what people call the big 3. We've got our carriage or pack system, we have our sleep system, and we have our shelter system. First up is pack system. This is a 35 litre day pack from a company called JJ's in the Brecon Beacons, who make the gear for the Special Forces in the British military. It's usually part of my bushcraft backpacking system, and it's extremely durable, got a lot of great features on it, not the lightest weight thing in the world. It's a 35 litre day pack and it weighs 1.3 kilos or there and about. Can we just check? 1,310 in grams, so not particularly light. It looks a bit daft in some of the videos that I did because when I was doing the camera work, I was kind of slackening it off to get my camera pole out to film, and it looks like it's off canter. It was actually well adjusted when I was walking in it normally. And the reason why I have this is because it fits very high on the back with relatively lightweight gear in it. So it had my clothes and sleeping stuff in it, basically. Sleeping mat in one of the expanders down one side, shelter in one of the sleeping down the other side, clothes in the main pack. So not a lot of weight. I can carry it high up on my back without it affecting my centre of balance or hurting my back. It also has space inside it for a 3 litre camelback and the cordage for routing the camelback down. And this is nothing fancy, call it a camelback, which is a brand I guess, whether this is a genuine camelback or a hydration bladder, whichever way you want to look at it. Some people hate these, some people love them. I swear by them. Since I started using them, I've never looked back. The camelback weighs 240 grams, which is lighter than pretty much any other water container I can think of that's as convenient to use as that is, and offers me 3 litres of capacity. Inside the light fighter pack, I had 3 Drypacks, a 25 litre, a 3 litre and a 1 litre for various bits and pieces. This was mostly clothes inside this one. The others had consumables or electronics and things like that that I didn't want to get wet. I don't usually run that with a rucksack liner for 2 reasons. I wear this with my webbing, which I'll come to in a second, which is another reason for having that pack. I also carry a reflective rucksack cover because almost every hike in Ireland has substantial road sections on it. And if it's early in the morning or late in the evening, or even you're walking down country lanes where there's a lot of tree cover, you want cars to be able to see you. You've often got no path at all, you're walking on the road and the road isn't very wide. This weighs 110 grams. And because I've got the gear inside my bag inside a dry sacks that I need to keep, and I've got this which is also waterproof, and I have my poncho as a waterproof for myself, which goes over me and both my packs, there's no reason to have a separate rucksack liner in the rucksack itself. I realised as I'm going through the pack system, it's the point where every ultralight, lightweight, and probably even normal weight backpackers in the comments section are currently having mild to major coronaries. I get it, boys. I carried my 95 pattern issue webbing with me for the week, and that's one of the reasons why I had the light fighter pack, because it's designed to sit above the webbing, whereas most backpacks, because of the long back length, actually put pressure on the webbing and put more pressure on your back. This is not light, let's be real clear on that. It weighs 2,280 grams, or just shy of 2.3 kilos. And that's without the medical kit or pouch, and there's a reason why that's separate, we'll come to it later in the video. Altogether, that takes my pack weight to almost 3.6 kilos, and that's not including the camelback or dry bags or anything else, which is ridiculously heavy. I get it. I've got a bit of a Wuhan waist at the moment for being off the trails a little more than I would like over the last 12 months. And part of what I wanted to do this week was, carry a little extra weight and train. The thing that I like about webbing and the light fighter pack, and the reason why I use this combination a lot on my 2 and 3 day hikes or when I'm going to do bushcraft work, is the modular accessibility of it. I hike along, I've got 2 ammo pouches this side and a utility pouch. I've got a utility pouch here and then my med pouch this side. The front 4 pouches allow me to get my canteen, waterproofs, insect headdress, compass, a bunch of other stuff that I'll show you as we go through what was packed in the webbing without having to take my pack off. And I had a couple of days where I had to do 8 hours of walking. And the downside of a lot of one-piece backpacks is that every time you want something, you've got to down kit and put it back on again. And I just didn't have a bag to hand that was big enough to carry everything that I wanted for the week that was going to be either particularly comfortable or particularly lightweight. I've got a couple of cheap regatta bags, the Survivor series, which are not bad for budget bags. But I'd lent them both, the 65 and the 85, to my friends a couple of weeks ago to do a hike with. Hadn't had a chance to pick them up yet. And so I needed something I could go out for 5 days that would carry everything that I needed. The webbing was nowhere near full, but it was a very convenient way to carry the weight. And I do like the way that webbing carries. Webbing has a H strap, so it has one going over the front, one going over the back. It also has 2 side yokes and a huge thick hip belt. So the weight is very close to you. It doesn't affect your center of gravity as much as a high pack. There are a lot of advantages to carrying one of these. The major disadvantage is the weight. The other thing is the breathability. When I mentioned before, I was talking about the boxes and how I got a little chafing. The reason you get chafing is when you have a backpack that doesn't vent properly at the back and the sweat collects on your back and then runs down. That's why you get chafing. The light fighter pack has a smooth back because it's usually designed to fit over webbing, and this means that unfortunately you're not getting the air gap anywhere here to get it away. This foam is not bad for wicking stuff away. This is not a framed rucksack, by the way. It just has a very soft HDPE lining to it, which keeps it relatively stiff without it weighing any more than the damn thing already does. Whereas the webbing on the back just has, I'll turn this around, just has this mesh system, so it's really not great at opening up. And as I say, you can see on this, you've got the front H straps that hang down the front, the back H straps, and then 2 side yokes as well. So rather than a traditional rucksack, where you've got your 2 straps here attached to your hip belt, and no matter what you do, the weight's quite high and it's also dragging you back no matter how much sits on your hips. It's why you need a good hip belt with a rucksack. This is very centered around the hips and then evenly distributed front to back with the weight. I really like the way that these carry. It doesn't mean that I'm recommending it to other people, and I'm sure people are going to rage about it in the comments. I haven't done any long distance stuff for a long time, and by long distance I just mean being out more than 3 days, and I just haven't needed a pack that size because I haven't done any lightweight long distance hiking. I do more bushcraft and camping than I do long distance hiking. I have now ordered a flex extender, 40 to 65 litre rucksack that should be here in a couple of days, to go and do stuff like this with in the future, which only weighs 1.2 kilos, which is going to save me nearly 2.5 kilos of what I was carrying here. I would recommend not doing what I did. There's specific reasons why I was carrying this pack. What I recommend most people should do is get around a 65 litre pack that weighs 1.5 to 2 kilos so that you don't have to spend a ton of money, and that's going to be great for the week. Okay, we've dealt with pack system, we've dealt with clothing. For those of you who are watching, you might realise this video is going to get really long and really detailed. As I say, I aimed it at people who are flying in to do this. If you're spending a couple of thousand of your hard-earned money to fly in this, I want to give you as much detail as I can. For everyone who wants the quick list, go to the article on the blog, which will be up about 2 to 3 days after this video is done. I've got some pretty complicated notes here, forgive me for referring to them. We've been through our clothing, which came to 2.8 kilos, 6 pounds. We've been through the stuff we were carrying on our back. I didn't put the weights of the Drypacks there, apologies for that, but everything there came to just over 4 kilos, that's an extra 9 pounds. Our total weight currently then is at about, 7 kilos or 15 pounds, give or take. I'm going to do sleep system and shelter system together for various reasons. I've just got it unpacked that way, and some of it was in the webbing and some of it wasn't. We'll do that next. This is a bit of a weird one, this, because it's kind of half lightweight backpacking gear and half my bushcraft gear, because I haven't quite replaced all of my bushcraft gear, the same as the pack, to give me both a bushcraft rig and a hiking rig, and this one's a bit of a hodgepodge of the two. So some of it's extremely lightweight and great, and some of it's heavier duty stuff for being in the backcountry. First up is this, a Sea to Summit insulated regular size sleeping mat. I treated myself to this a couple of weeks ago. This is the second time I used it, and all I can say is, oh my god, why did I not buy one of these before? They give you such a fantastic night's sleep. If you're going to be camping along the Wicklow Way, then you're probably going to make use of the air and DAC shelters at some point in the middle of the route, at Basha Gap, at Mullacore, where I stayed, or at Mucklag. And when you sleep on the floor of those, it's great because it's a flat surface, but it is very, very hard, and having this was absolutely fantastic. It comes with this air sac on the outside of it, which you blow into, scrunch up, and then push down, and it inflates the mat. It's absolutely fantastic, can't recommend it enough. As I say, this is the insulated version in a regular size. It's not the ultra lightweight one that they do, it's the insulated, because I only wanted to buy one. These things are not cheap. And it came on at 527.5 grams with the stuff sack. Next up, and this caused much amusement amongst other hikers I saw upon the trail, because it's one of the few really ultralight pieces of gear that I own. This is my sleeping bag. It is an OMM Mountain Raid 100 that I bought recently. It's a summer sleeping bag. It's absolutely fantastic. It's very, very lightweight, very, very comfortable. Used this 2 or 3 times now, been very, very, very happy with it. And this weighs in at 347.5 grams. We were having a good laugh at the end of the route with the dying cow. These lads turned up with bags that were nearly as big as me, and his sleeping bag was this 2.4 kilo budget monstrosity, and it was like this big, and I was like, there's mine. It's one of those few occasions as a guy where small is better to brag about. Next up, and I'm doing this in no particular order, I suppose I should have thought about that first, is this, which is a Snugpak jungle hammock. It has a hammock with an integrated mosquito net over the top. I picked this because I can either string it in the woods, because there's plenty of plantation woodland along the route, to wild camp, or if I made it to the shelters, I can lay it in the bottom of the shelter and string the mosquito, tie the mosquito net to the roof of the shelter and be able to keep the bugs off me as I sleep. The night I spent in the shelter, there was another lad in there who was extremely jealous that I had this. He got a tent with him for the other nights, which is what a lot of people would do, and then for the shelter night he put his tarpaulin down, roll mat, sleeping bag, and then his face got absolutely bitten to crap by insects all night. I was tucked away safely in this and had a fantastic night's sleep. It's also, because the mesh is so fine, keeps some of the ambient light out a little bit as well, and really does help you get off to sleep. It doesn't block light as much as a tent, it's pretty good. That weighs 725 grams, which obviously is much, much lighter than a tent, although it only forms part of a shelter system. Originally, when the week started, it was raining before the heat wave, and we didn't know the heat wave was coming in. The jungle hammock has a hammock underneath and then a mesh net over the top, but it doesn't have an integrated waterproof cover, which can be an issue if the weather's as changeable as it is in Ireland. I'd ordered a new lightweight tarp for that, but it hadn't yet arrived. And instead I took, as Alex calls him, Sir Basha, which is my military issue Basha. These are fantastic, it's part of my bushcraft kit, they are extremely rugged, you can turn them into a stretcher, they're huge, you can use them as a ground sheet, they're phenomenal bits of kit, and one of the few bits of British military kit which is actually better than the American equivalent. However, Sebastian's kind of chunky, he's a little bit like me, he's old and he's put on a few pounds, and he's 962 grams. What turned up in the post yesterday was I bought from DD Hammocks their super light tarp, which only weighs 470 grams. So now for future hikes, I've got my jungle hammock and the super light tarp to go over the top of it, which is 1250 grams, and it's super comfortable. I can use it as a ground bivvy, I can use it as a hammock, I can use it as a mosquito shelter inside one of these Arendac huts, or a bothy in Scotland. Works fantastic for all that and comes in at 1.25 kilos. While costing me less than €200, I mean, I can't get a super light backpacking tent for anywhere near that money. Obviously, it's only going to be good for sort of April through to September, but let's face it, that's when most people are hiking the Wicklow Way. And no matter what time I'd done the Wicklow Way, other than winter, I wouldn't have changed that shelter system one bit, other than swapping Basha for the new lightweight tarp. Alex is actually grimacing at me behind the camera. She's very fond of Basha. At the end of day 2, when Alex was going home, A, because she doesn't like to wild camp, she gets a bit jittery, and we were only being for the first 2 nights. B, because I wanted a couple of days on the trail on my own, and C, because she had a modelling shoot that weekend, I gave her Basha and she took him home with her, because knowing that how great the weather was at that point, it was very unlikely it was going to turn, and carrying an extra kilo of weight for no reason was kind of pointless. So I only had to carry that for the first 2 days. In addition to the sleeping bag that I took, I had my Snugpak jungle blanket with me. This is a great bit of kit. It's an insulated blanket, and in spring and in autumn you fall into a river, get yourself absolutely drenched through. What you can do is undress, wrap this around you and leave your clothes out to dry and not lose all of your body heat. They're really, really great. It's really an evolution, in my mind, of the British jungle sleeping bag, which works the same way, where it can be turned into a Saxon cloak to wear around you. It's a fantastic bit of kit, this. Honestly, probably should have left it at home with the heat this week. As it was, what I did was put my tarpaulin down, put my insulated mat down inside the hammock, obviously I should say, put this on top of the insulated mat, and then put my sleeping bag on top of it, which just meant I had more layers underneath me, and I was nice and cosy and comfortable. So kind of good in one way, but carrying it for the whole week when I didn't need to was kind of pointless. That being said, I could have used this sleep and shelter system for any of the main months that people walk the Wicklow Way. From the end of April right the way through to the end of September, this sleep and shelter system would have kept me warm, dry, safe, protected from the bugs at any point through the season, and I wouldn't change a single thing about it. Because of the wild camping options and how difficult it is, a hammock is actually super practical, especially when you can use as a ground bivvy like this, and having a layered sleeping bag and blanket system allows you to adjust your body temperature. I prefer this rather than just a 1 unit sleeping bag or a 1 quilt. The jungle blanket weighs 714.5 grams, so as I say, could have left it alone this week. Last up is this, which is a tarp. It's just a cheap one that you pick up out of your local DIY centre for working under your car or what have you. Not ideal. I've just bought, with the DD Superlight tarp that I bought the DD Magic carpet, and yes, of course I asked them how fast it went and they didn't tell me. They've still not responded to the email. This weighs 250 grams. I don't think that the Magic carpet weighs much less. It's just a better bit of kit and easier to use. I use that for something I could quickly pull out of my pack to sit down and have my lunch on during the day and keep my pack off the boggy ground where it was boggy even with the heat, or when I camped the night in the shelter to lay it out underneath my hammock so I wasn't getting the bottom of the hammock straight onto the ground. Always carry one of these with me anyway. As I say, I've upgraded it since. Consulting my notes, the total weight of my sleep and shelter system, 3,526.5 grams, around 8 pounds, 3.5 kilos. That now brings us up to 23 pounds or 10.5 kilos. As I say, I could have left out a kilo of weight there with leaving the Basha at home, and I could have left out nearly another 3/4 of a kilo of weight by leaving the jungle blanket at home as well. Okay, we're now into what I had in the webbing. I'm going to start on the front left pouches, which is the 2 ammo pouches. I'm not going to give you the individual weights of every single bit of kit here. This is what I had there, and what I had in my pockets kind of as well. It was rotating through these. These 2 ammo pouches at the side sit just in front of my left hip, and they're really convenient for grabbing stuff out. So I'll run through what was in those over the course of the week. My poor Timberlands, which broke halfway through the first day. So I had my prescription sunglasses in there, camera case, and my Sony action cam, which was the main reason why my filming was so poor this week, and that's what I was filming on. Some of it's just down to me being completely incompetent with a camera. That's going to improve, I assure you, but this was not the best thing to use. Silver compass was in there, pocket tissues, dextrose tabs, spare lighter, it's a claw gear lighter, great bit of kit. My torch, which is a Fenix. Yes, it's not a cheap torch, it's exceptional though. I think on its lowest battery setting it lasts for 166 hours, and it has a strobe for SOS. Fantastic bit of kit. Total overkill for a hiker? Maybe. It's my gear, back up off my bro, I'll carry what I want to carry. Cables. 2 of them. There's a reason there's 2. I had this fantastic multi-cable which gave me every connection I needed with one cable, which was fantastic until one of them broke, which was the one that fit my phone, which had my navigation on it. I ended up buying a second one halfway through the week, which was not brilliant, I'll be honest. However, that's now sorted. I've got into more on that in the video, so I won't go through it. It was an issue because I was carrying this, which is a power bank with a torch built into it, and it has a solar top-up on the back, and that was there to top up my camera battery and to top up my phone. Fantastic bit of kit this, to be honest. Review on that at some point in the future. I had my paracord bracelet on my wrist, which of course is in Royal Air Force colours. I had a small folding pocket knife in my back pocket. This is a one-handled open knife. It's an extremely lightweight skeletonized knife from Smith & Wesson. Very handy for cutting cord, small tiny fiddly first aid kit that my main knife won't carry, and I wasn't, as I say, normally this is my bushcraft bag and I would have my multi-tool and everything else in here. Wasn't carrying any of that, so I just had this tiny little first aid knife in there. I had my armoured Zippo. I realise there's another lighter there. I always carry a backup when it comes to making fire. That's just what I do because I'm a bushcrafter, and also I smoke, so this is my main lighter. This is an armoured, it's not a standard Zippo, it's an armoured one. It's a little heavier, but not much. It comes in at 68 grams, and I think the regular one's 50. And ironically, even though I smoke a pack a day, this lighter lasted the entire week. I didn't have to fill it up until 2 days after I got back. At 160 grams, I had the official Wicklow Way guidebook with the maps in it, which I ended up using with my compass to navigate with for a good part of one day because of the failure of my navigation equipment on my phone. Please don't do any form of trail in the world, no matter how well travelled it is, without taking at least a compass with you. Please don't do it. Last but not least, in terms of things I was carrying, single trekking pole. This is probably the cheapest trekking pole you can get. It's a Eurohike Expedition, which sounds great. It's not a bad little pole, actually. It's got an anti-shock in the bottom of it. It extends out to a decent hike. But they are 310 grams. I only took one with me. Trekking poles on the hike are this debate, do you need them or not? There's a couple of bits on the way, especially when you're coming down off the main Wicklow Way, down through the Miners Way, where it's rock all the way down. Now, it was perfectly dry sunshine this week, and I still nearly took a tumble down it, and I was using a single trekking pole. I would not like to come down that in any form of bad weather without poles, especially if I was walking solo. And for most of the route, they're not needed, but there are just a couple of bits, especially if you're walking solo, where a trekking pole is a good idea. Obviously, you can save weight by buying the black diamond carbon fibre ones or something like that if you have the budget to do so. That covers the bits and bats that were in my pockets or in those 2 ammo pouches, which is the stuff that I'm rotating all day long. As I say, great thing about the webbing, you're walking along, I've got these 2 ammo pouches here, I can just pull stuff in. You get much more inside of these than you do on, the little hip pockets that you get on most rucksacks. In fact, just over a kilo of weight without the trekking pole, where 1.3 altogether for these knickknacks with the trekking pole. I haven't put in phone or your credit cards, keys, and other bits and pieces, because that's going to kind of depend on you, how many cards you're taking with you and stuff like that. One note on that, if you're taking cards, please do take cash as well. Some of these rural areas and little villages and stuff that you go through, you may not even be able to use your card, probably won't be a cash machine. You don't want to get stuck and want to buy food or water or anything else and not have cash on you. I didn't personally have a problem with that over the week, but it's one of those, why take the risk? Consulting the magic book of weights, yes, I have literally taken my micro scales and weighed every single piece of gear for you here. That little summary of what was in the ammo pouches, the pockets and the stick in the hand is 1,394.5 grams, or just over 3 pounds. Takes us to a total of 11.8 kilos, or 26 pounds. Moving around the pack next to the canteen pouch, which is the next pouch that sits around my hip that again I can access as I walk. Here's a contentious item that all hikers will complain about and all bushcrafters will wonder why people don't take. This is a Mora Garberg. This is my if I could only own one knife for doing everything with. This is the knife that I choose. That is strapped to the side of my canteen pouch. Strapped to the other side of the canteen pouch is this, which is a Silky Gomboy, which again, just like the Mora Garberg, is kind of the standard for most bushcrafters of the basics of what you want to have with you doing bushcraft. I actually sent this home with Alex on day 2 and then seriously regretted it because I was trying to save some weight the night that I stayed at the Mullacore shelter. It is a public forest, but that doesn't mean you can just go hacking branches down wherever you want. And because people have been staying at the shelter regularly, there just wasn't a lot of dead wood lying around. There were areas within 100 metres or so where the Forestry Service had kind of cut a lot of stuff down and then left the excess, which is usually what people burn. But what happens over time is the moss and everything else grows and the bottoms of all those branches are buried, and it's the top sort of 4 or 5 feet of this dead wood which is dried out and it's great to burn. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to snap that dried wood off the wet wood below manually with your hands on top of a timber stack. It's not something you want to be balancing and messing around with. If I'd had the saw with me, we could have cut a night's firewood in like 5 minutes, and I kind of wish I'd kept that with me. Where the Mora knife came in most use was actually that night. I mean, it's usually there for emergencies, but for that night it was fantastic because the wood that we did have close to the shelter was all with its bark on, and very quickly with that knife I was able to take the bark off that wood and shave down some feather sticks to get a fire going without having to use a lot of chemical fuel. That's strapped to either side of the canteen pouch. As you can imagine, what's in the canteen pouch is my Pathfinder canteen set. This consists of the canteen itself, a cup, which also serves as a stove, or as a pot I should say, and the bottom section serves as a twig stove for you to put underneath it, which I used for my coffee and for heating my mini breakfast the next morning. Also inside the canteen pouch would have been a small poly bag here, which would have had my coffees and hot chocolates in. 1 sachet of fire dragon fuel, which as I say I didn't need to use because I made feather sticks to start a fire. However, I always carry at least 1, if not 2 of these with me, so that I can always make a fire, especially in winter when it's very cold. Do remember, just because you've got a lighter on you, sure spark doesn't mean sure flame doesn't mean sure fire. Fires are built up in layers, and keeping yourself warm is one of the ways you avoid exposure. I also had bin bags in the canteen pack. If you watch the video, you'll see when I turned up at Basha Gap on the second day, the state of the area around the hut was absolutely disgusting. There's a principle called leave no trace. If you pack it in with you, pack it in out with you, take some bin bags. Each day get your rubbish, pop it in a bin bag, tie it to the back of your pack. When you come along to the next bin that you find, empty the bin bag. You'll note that I haven't put coffee sachets and hot chocolate sachets and stuff like that back into the canteen pouch. The same as those ammo pouches would have had some small snacks as well, you know, munchies for along the way, my Lion bars and what have you. And the reason being, normally when people are doing pack weight, they don't add the calories, and we'll discuss that a little bit later on because a lot of it's personal choice. Weight on that comes to 1,351.5 grams, or just over 3 pounds. That takes us up to 29 pounds total, just over 13 kilos. Yes, you can save some weight on this. If you're B&Bing, you're not going to need any form of stove. And I've got a Camelback, so I probably wouldn't have needed the canteen. I wouldn't have needed my knife with me, I wouldn't have needed my saw with me either. However, if I'm going to go on wild camp, that's kind of bare minimum gear for me. I'm really not taking any less than that. Plenty of other ultralight options. You could have a jet boil stove or something like that. I'm sure everyone's getting bored by now. No apologies, I promise you detail and you're going to get it. The next 2 pouches round on my webbing are utility pouches which sit roughly below my hip, around about on my hips, just below my kidneys on my back there. You can still get to these when you walk, but it's not convenient, so I tend to keep weight in here that I don't want to access too quickly. The first one had my hammock and a few other bits and pieces in it, so we don't have to do the weight there, we've already done it. The second one was basically my food pouch. We were staying in B&Bs most nights, and you're at the beginning and start of every day, apart from one, you're in easy access of a village to get your breakfast and evening meal, and it's one of the ways where I actually did manage to save some weight by not having to carry a lot of food. Each day I'd get up in the morning, get a good breakfast somewhere, and then buy something for lunch, and that's what I had to carry with me. And as I said, I'll do calories and water at the end of this. The only thing that's in my food pouch that I am going to count in my base weight is this, where I took a 450 calorie, ready to eat meal, which lives in there as emergency rations. If you do mountain trail running, you're required to carry emergency rations with you in your bag, and they have to still be there at the end of the event, otherwise they don't qualify as emergency rations. It's the same reason why I counted the weight of the glucose tabs. The other thing that's in here is some water purification tabs and some electrolyte tabs. I've got my canteen with me. I don't like to carry water because it weighs a ton, but you're in the middle of summer, there's no choice. You've got adequate ability to refill your water in the morning, refill your water in the evening, and most of the day there are running streams. The thing that you've not noticed anywhere in my kit right now, and it's because it's not here, is a water filter. I normally carry a Life Systems kit which will filter heavy metals, bacteria and viruses, and I use that if I'm bushcrafting for a couple of days so that I don't backpack a lot of water in, and I use it if I'm camping or hiking with multiple people because it's very convenient for that. I don't have one of these silly little life straws because to me they're emergency use only. It's keep me alive in emergency. The reason being that those small life straws or the Sawyer micro squeeze filters or anything like that only filter bacteria and heavy metals. And if there's anything we've learned the last year or so, it's hey, viruses can jump from animals. It's a thing. No, jokes aside, I'm not using the C word because the great thing about being on the Wicklow Way was I didn't have to hear it all week. It was brilliant. I didn't use it on this. Instead I carried Puritabs because they weighed pretty much nothing. I could get my canteen, dip it into a river, pop a Puritab in it, leave it for half an hour because that canteen is a single stainless wall canteen. You can boil in it, and you can't in an aluminium without poisoning yourself, and you can't in a vacuum flask without it exploding. The downside being, the water that's coming down off these mountains is very peaty in terms of taste. It actually looks brown, it's not, it's just the peat washing through. It's great if you're a whiskey connoisseur, but I'm a bourbon guy, and honestly the taste gets a bit much after a while. So what I would do is pop a Puritab in, leave it for half an hour, and then pop an Electrolyte tab in. And those Puritabs are in my split between my ration pack and my canteen pack, so that they're easy to handle whatever I'm doing. I also had some antiseptic hand wipes in the food thing, because you stop, you eat lunch, and you want to clean yourself up and wipe all the mess off you that you just got on yourself. And I actually think I forgot to mention, in my canteen kit is this little Sea to Summit titanium spork, which weighs like virtually nothing. Fantastic bit of kit, great for eating MREs. And I had that and my knife, and that's really all the cutlery that I needed for the week. That's the two back pouches dealt with, and let's move on to the elephant in the room, and it nearly does weigh as much as an elephant. As I said before, when I was weighing the webbing, I'd left out this, which is my first aid pouch. We're now around to the right side here, and this is my second in from the right pouch, because I want to be able to access my first aid kit quickly if I need it. Most hikers do not carry what I would call proper first aid kits. They carry a few blister plasters and bits and pieces like that. It was an incredibly bad week for the sun, so I had to pick up some suntan lotion, which is, I've usually got a tiny tube of Factor 50 in if I'm doing snow work, just to stop my face getting blistered, which happened to me once in Snowdonia. I don't usually have that much with me, but being out for 5 days and desperately needing it, I had to pick some up from the chemist. That said, my first aid kit weighs 1.3 kilos. Digest that for a minute, let it sink in, that's fine. I know you're all going to go crazy. I'll do a separate video another time on what I carry in my hiking first aid kit, so everybody who's a serious hiker who's just carrying 2 blister plasters and a piece of duct tape and thinks that enough can have a good giggle. I like to carry proper first aid kit, especially when I'm solo, and also if I meet someone else on the trail who's had a serious accident, I want to be able to help deal with it. There is also the fact that I'm walking long road sections on almost every Irish trail that I walk, and you know, road traffic accidents are a thing, so again, I carry a proper first aid kit. And the reason I didn't include it in my webbing is, even if I wasn't using the webbing, I would have had this strapped to my pack or inside my pack. If you're hiking in a group, a first aid kit like that is something that you can break out between you so that you've got everything you need. Wait for those, for the rations and that. I'm not going to bother doing the hammock again because we already did it, but we've now got most of the way around the pouches, and we are at 1.625 kilograms for that section, about 3.5 pounds. We're now up to 14.8 kilos, or about 32.5 pounds, maybe. Okay, we're up to the last pouch in what we would consider base weight. This is the pouch that sits here on my right hip. Much like the ammo pouches, I'll have a few snacks and stuff in here. In fact, I probably have the bulk of the sort of daily snacks that I'm munching along in this pack, but there are some other things that I carry with me that I want quick access to when I'm walking, and I'll just show you what those are. I'm not going to give you the individual weights now. I'll write them on the article so that you don't get even more bored than you already are. A buff. Pretty much everybody carries these. Great to keep the insects off the neck, keep the sun off your neck, keep you warm when it is cold and dry. I don't always wear a baseball cap, and if it was like light drizzle and I didn't want to throw my poncho on, what I would do is put this beanie, which varies very little, underneath my baseball cap, or just wear this on its own, keeps most of the heat in your head. Remember that you lose most of the heat from your head. I didn't use either of these over the course of the week. One thing that I did use was an insect headrest, which was handy at a couple of points in the plantation forest when the sort of midges and everything were absolutely swarming, to be able to pull this out, pull it on, and walk down the trail without being savage. Great little bit of kit, doesn't weigh much. This is actually just an ex-surplus one. It's not one of the modern fancy trail running ones, which are a little more comfortable to wear, I admit, but this was cheap. Next up is this Trekology travel pillow, and it seems kind of weird, right? It's part of my sleep system. Why is it in that pouch there? Reason being that a lot of the time I'll throw my tarpaulin down on the floor when I take a break, and I'll just quickly take this, put 3 puffs of air in it, and just sit on it so I can, have a comfy seat while I sit and rest. Some people will do that with their underblanket and with their inflatable, but I don't, because this was like €20 and that was like 150, and if something's going to pop accidentally on a thorn or a rock or something like that, I would rather it was this than that, and that's obviously the final part of my sleep system. As you heard me mention, touched about the poncho a couple of times, I don't carry waterproofs. Waterproof trousers and waterproof jackets make me sweat, they're not breathable, it's uncomfortable, I tend to run hot anyway. It would have been an absolute nightmare this week if it had rained whilst it was hot if I was using ordinary waterproofs. I tend to take a poncho. I can take this out, throw it over me, my pack, and the webbing, and it goes almost down to my knees, keeps almost all of me dry, but it's big and baggy and it's a little bit more breathable than ordinary waterproofs. Of course, you do look like a little bit of a tit wearing it, that's the downside. Other thing being, you can use your trekking pole, put it up in the middle of this and use it as a sun shelter at the side of the road when you stop and take a break when it's really sunny, or a rain shelter if you want to stop and have a snack in heavy rain. For that purpose, inside it, I keep a couple of MSR mini groundhog tent stakes, and I can, again, I've got an emergency shelter and everything else. If I wasn't taking the rest of my shelter kit with me because I'm B&Bing, I'd still have my poncho with me for that reason, because I've now got some form of emergency shelter. In addition to that, if I didn't have the sleep system and I was just doing B&Bs, I'd have one of those large orange emergency bags that you can climb into and it keeps your body heat up. That kit together only comes to 548 grams, or just over a pound or so. Reason being, as I say, bulk of my snacks would have been on that side rather than the left, and it keeps the pouches balanced much the same way as the Canteen pouch weighs like 1.3 odd kilos, and the first aid kit weighs 1.3 odd kilos. Nice balance either side. The only thing I have left out when I've done this has been, like I said, wallet, keys, phone, the things that A, you're normally carrying with you anyway, and B, are going to be subjective depending on which phone you've got and that kind of stuff. The reason why I've weighed so much kit here and I've broken it all out is because there is this obsession with ultralight hikers and YouTubers in general to say, oh, look at my 6-pound hiking pack and I've got this and everything else. It's become an obsession and a cool thing amongst people. And people have started to cheat, because what they do is they go, oh yeah, that's just a little first aid kit, doesn't weigh much, or this is that, it doesn't weigh much. I have weighed every single thing that was on my body, my pack system, everything, so you know exactly what I was carrying and exactly what it weighed. My entire base weight for the week, about 15.5 kilos, just over 34 pounds. As I say, if you were B&Bing, you can take some off that straight away, and if I'd had some lighter weight gear and better pack and stuff, I could have taken a couple of kilos out of this as well. I'm nearly 40. I'd done a 45k hike a day before I started this. I did a 45k hike, one rest day, and went into this, and I was carrying 20 kilos on that because it was a bushcrafting weekend. I'm not in the best physical condition because we've all been locked up for so long, and I smoke a pack a day. 15.5 kilo base weight, I can manage, and I did a 40 kilometre day while carrying this base weight in 31 degree Celsius heat. I'll work out what that is later in Fahrenheit for those countries that have landed on the moon. Was it massively comfortable at that base weight? No, I would have liked to shave a couple of kilos out of it. If I had this down to like a 12 kilo base weight, it would have been super. If I get it down to 10, fantastic, and I've been absolutely flying over those mountains. It does affect your pace a little bit. Now that we've covered base weight in its entirety, which is the thing that's going to remain constant for us all week, let's talk a little bit about calories and water. As I said, we stay in B&Bs. We were able to fuel in the morning, fuel at night, just buy a lunch each day to carry with us. If you were wild camping, you have still got access to towns to be able to do that, and it's significantly more comfortable than carrying your calories. Obviously, if you're on a budget and you're trying to use just packed food all week, you're going to have to weigh that out and take it into account. For me, I was carrying on average about a kilo, 2.2 pounds of food at any given time, excluding the emergency rations I talked about earlier, to have snacks and a lunch to keep me going between a big breakfast and an evening meal. As far as water goes, I was carrying about 2 kilos of water any time. 2 litres is 2 kilos, or about 4.4 pounds to make this 6.6 pounds total, or 3 kilos for calories and water. I'd get up in the morning, I'd put like 1.75 litres in my camelback of fresh water from wherever we were setting off from. If it was a stream, it would have been purified, and then I had these flavoured electrolyte tabs that I'd drop in to improve the taste. If we were in a town, I'd fill it with, I don't know, an isotonic sports drink instead. The other quarter litre would be in my canteen, which meant I always had a quarter of a litre of perfectly fresh, clean water. If I needed to flush a wound out or something like that, then I had that available to me. And that's what I carry. And that takes my total pack weight with everything, from head to toe, every bit of gear I was wearing, carrying the lot, about 18.5 kilos or 41 pounds. And I think you could very easily get that down to about 15 kilos, which would be, 2.2, I don't know, 35 pounds, something like that. I think any less than that, if you're camping, you're going to be sacrificing some things that you may want. And this is for all season, this kit. I think, I've been through some changes maybe I would make, but overall this will get you all the way through the year. If you're B&Bing, you may well be able to get down to a day pack, depending on what you're doing. If you're going to carry your gear from B&B to B&B and you've got extra clothes and stuff, all right, maybe not so much. You'd still get lower than a camper's backpack. But you have these guided tours now for the Wicklow Way where the B&Bs will arrange to ship from one to the next your gear, which means you can just stick a couple of kilo day pack on and off you go, and you will fly over those hills and you will have a great time. I hope that this was helpful to somebody. If this kind of video helped one person, then it was worth shooting, I get. I'm going to try, and if I can, if we're still in Ireland, do the Wicklow Way again in winter, and we can do a gear comparison and see how much extra that takes. Especially because there'll be slightly less support from B&Bs. I'll probably try and wild camp the whole thing and just see how heavy and uncomfortable it can get if you're going to deal with the cold and snow and rain and everything else. If you did enjoy this, you did find it useful, please do like, share, hit the subscribe button. This is going to be the first of a series as we try and build the channel up. We've been a long time getting the channel started. Ironically, prepping channel. Over the last year, we hit a situation that we prepped for, and we were focusing on that and not building a prepping channel, sharing our findings with other people. So it's important to us. It takes about 5 hours of work to film, do retakes, edit and publish, even as poor quality as this seems, for an hour video. So it really does help if we know that some people are finding some value to it. We are not members of the YouTube Partner Program. There is no sponsorship. No one gave me any of this gear. I bought it all with my own money, and I put my own time into doing it, so that way we can be completely honest with you. If you do see YouTube ads on the video, I apologise for that. There's nothing I can do about it. As you may be aware, YouTube changed their terms of service recently that they can monetize anybody's content they feel like, even if it's not part of the partner program. So that is just what it is. For me, it's Spartan Prepping. Thank you very much. I'm going to try in the next couple of days and get the accompanying blog post to this done. And in the future, I will keep it updated with anything that changes and I think can be helpful. We're also working on a longer video that covers the actual hike itself, what stages you should do, which B&Bs are good, where you can get food, where you can get water and that kind of thing, and what each day's stages are like to walk. That's just going to take significantly more time to produce. And I thought this one would be a good one to get out for people early. Thank you very much. Thank you from Spartan Prepping. Thank you to our incompetent camera minion Alex for being behind the camera and being so good about this, despite the fact how terrible I am on camera. She's usually on the other side of it with her modelling, but today she's behind it. Goodbye, good night, thank you very much.